Jordan, thanks for taking time to sit down with me today.
Yeah, no problem.
So Jordan, where do you go to school?
I go to school currently at Colorado's finest, but I run for my feeder high school, which is Bear Creek High School.
Bear Creek High School. Very cool. So I know we're gonna take some steps down memory lane here. You haven't always lived in Colorado.
No, I haven't.
Where'd you move from?
I moved from Fairfax, Virginia, I think when I was 9 or 10.
Okay.
Roughly around there.
Okay. So with that, when did you start running? Because I know that you came to our program, not just in high school, but you came to us with some prior club experience.
Yeah, so I started running when I was 7 with a program in Virginia called FPYC. And that's where my mom signed me and my sister up for it. But that's where I started running. I started during the cross country season.
So now you currently run hurdles. When did you find that hurdles were like, I'm better at hurdles than most?
Around middle school, I'd say 6th, 7th grade, I found that hurdles just worked better for me than the mile did at the time because I was growing and I wasn't getting the times I wanted to get. So I swapped over to hurdles and I found that was just more fun.
Yeah, and you're good at them. I think I've put you many times teaching people how to go over hurdles, especially for indoor. So let's keep kind of going back. We'll work our years up here. What do you feel like is your earliest memory as a runner? Like, do you remember a specific track practice or like maybe the first one and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
So I was running a 3K when I was 8. It was cold rain. It was miserable outside, but I got a cramp and I was 8. So it hurt and I didn't know how to deal with it. And that was my first ever did not finish race.
You just walked off?
Yeah, I just walked off, I think around mile 1 or 2.
And you're just like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah, and it was one of the few races I didn't finish. So that one kind of stuck with me a little bit.
Okay. Do you still think about that race when it's cold, wet, and rainy out?
Occasionally I do. But then I remember that, oh yeah, I can deal with the pain. So it's more or less, I take it as a learning experience.
Yeah.
Because the only other race I can think of that I DNF'd from was also a cold, miserable, and rainy race. And that was on the track.
So it doesn't sound like cold, miserable, rainy is your thing.
It's not.
I think we've had a few cold, wet, miserable days here in Colorado.
Yeah.
I might have to post a photo up of, I think we've got about 3 inches on top of the additional 6 inches we got right here.
Yeah, with the frozen hair.
The frozen hair. That's good. That's good. So what or who got you into running? Like, I know you said your mom signed you up, but was there anyone that you had in your life that was like, hey, maybe you had an uncle or, an aunt that ran as well?
I'd say the big pushing factor was there was this kid at FPYC. His name was Ryan Harrison. So he was a super big pushing factor because he was so fast at his age.
Yep.
And part of me is like, I want to be up there. I want to be with those top guys and running the mile and running that fast. So, I mean, obviously that didn't work out because now I do hurdles, but
it's okay.
Those things happen. He was one of the biggest motivation factors for me when I was little.
So that got you excited?
Yes, he got me excited.
That's cool because I think a lot of kids your age and even kids in high school, right? They could be on the outside looking in and they would see someone that is faster or better. And instead of saying, wow, that's really motivating, they go, I don't want to be anywhere near that because it scares them, right?
Yeah.
Because so what was motivating about that? Was it just that's possible? Does that feel like that was a dream that you could see?
I guess it was the concept of being the fastest runner out there. And I just, I want to be out there and competing with, the top people.
Right.
So for me, seeing someone that was running that ridiculously fast at like 6, 7 years old,
right, was,
that's a big pushing factor for a kid that doesn't quite understand the mental concept of, oh, this is too hard. Sure. Or, that's a hard place to reach at that age. So
I think it really shows that, you weren't, I think it shows the fearlessness that I think all of us at 6, 7, 8 years old had that were just like, why not? Why can't I do this? Right. And I think as we age, we kind of get into this place where we're like, oh, this isn't possible. This isn't real. And maybe sometimes we talk ourselves away from being able to accomplish at our highest and best. And I think a guy like Reinhardt definitely had the ability.
Yep.
And he also had the mental tenacity to go after it. And I think in a lot of ways, one of the things I've really loved in coaching you and having you on the team is that you always find the silver lining. You've always found this way that's like, it might be crappy. This may not be the place that I like to be, right? Like it's wet, it's snowy, it's dark, it's cold. But then you show up and you always find a way to turn that smile on. And I think you have grown. I think one of the biggest things, I remember the first time you came to camp, you were this kind of quiet kid. And then it's like, oh, who's this Jordan kid? And he turned into this like really fun, happy-go-lucky. And I felt like you found your people at camp.
I did.
And that was a really cool thing, because now it's like I go and watch you at meets and like you're the hurdler, but it's like now you give distance kids a reason to watch their hurdles, right? And it becomes a really cool, special thing. So that's been super cool for me to see. But also just kind of watching you get out of your shell.
Yeah.
It's been super cool. So here's the toughest question I think I ask in this whole thing is, what do you love most about running?
Oh yeah, that is a tough one. I'd say outside of, competition and competing, I really like the strategic value of it, because there's always something different you can do in a race, even if it's not a PR or if it is a PR. There are different people that are going to be in every single race that you have. So trying to build some sort of strategy around that is always super fun, because there might be people who finish faster, so you have to wait to finish faster with them, or you have people that are early pushers and you have to push with them. So your strategy changes always, and I find that super interesting.
Sometimes people kick hurdles in your lane too.
That too.
Some strategies don't go to plan, right?
Yeah, sometimes you have to adapt to a situation.
I think you've done a really great job of adapting over the years. I would say that is one of your skills, is that you can kind of roll with the punches.
Yeah.
So we're moving from, what you really love to what do you feel? And this could be both from school, this could be running, this could be anything. This could even be outside of the last 4 years. But the question really is from your standpoint, what has been the hardest part about the last 4 years for you?
Growing back into a body that I used to know how to use. Because around middle school, freshman year, I just could not for the life of me get my body to function the way that I wanted it to. Like, how you used to when you're fast and all of that. So relearning certain movements, like going over hurdles or learning how to breathe correctly, learning how to run properly again, was super hard for me. I didn't really get that till maybe last junior year, like track season of junior year.
So is it just did you feel really frustrated with that?
I was super frustrated with it. That's part of the reason I don't run the mile anymore.
Okay.
Because at the time I was like, I dropped back my time by a solid 1 or 2 minutes. So I was super frustrated with the fact that it's like, I can't run that fast anymore. That's super hard for me. So then at that point I started nitpicking events, and that's when I went to sprinting. Okay. And that's when I found hurdles, because hurdles, you don't have to spend as much time on the ground worrying about all of that. So
it's true. Less time to think about it. You just got to go do it, right?
Yeah. So it was much easier for me to translate that over. So I started with the 110s, and then I moved to 300, realizing that I still had that endurance left over from peak and from, just running the mile all the time. So moving or like mashing those two together was just really helpful for me.
So from your standpoint, and this kind of goes outside the bounds of the questions, I think a lot of times people see that boys have this great linear progression, that it's just like, oh, you're good freshman year. By the time they're seniors, they're just, crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of boys, it's just about, can't wait till I hit puberty and then it'll be fine. From your standpoint, it felt like you kind of had to wander and walk through that. For anybody that's listening to this, what would you tell somebody that was in your same position, that they know that they're capable, they know that their body can do some really cool, really fast things, but it's just not happening right now? The body's focused on something else. What's your advice to them?
I'd say be patient, because I was impatient with how it worked, and I ended up, changing a lot of events. So I'd say be patient with your body first off. And if something ends up, really not working, try to find something else that does for running, whether that be like the 400 or the 2 mile, or, even if it's a field event. I mean, you just have to find something that would work for your body as it's growing. And sometimes that ends up sticking with you, or you can just swap back afterwards if you're feeling better after. Yeah. Because your body, it's always changing. So right. Some people, some people are lucky and their puberty is super linear.
Yep.
And, they go super well through freshman through high school, and some people dip off. And that's fine. You just have to find a way to work with it and adapt to the situation.
All right. So, Jordy, I was asking you before the camera decided to go sideways on us, the fun factor in this. I think a lot of people can get stuck when they're in your position. They knew they were fast. They were capable of it. Did you switch events because it was fun or because you saw success?
I saw success, but also hurdles are just fun.
Good.
I think the mile, as fun as it was, I just at some point I realized that, laps 3 and 4 for me they weren't that fun to deal with. And going into high school and into a situation where it's like, oh, you actually have to be much faster was kind of a dip off for me.
Right.
So working with hurdles and, everyone not being good at it in high school because that's most likely their first time, it was super fun because everyone's failing at first. And so...
Safe place to fail.
Yeah, it was a safe place to fail for me.
That's cool. That's really cool. So we're getting towards the end of this thing here. Since you've been running for so long, I think the message here could be really deep or it's just super simple. What do you feel like is the message that you wish you could share with a younger version of yourself?
Never give in. Just never give up. And never, I think that's really just it. Never give up on your goals no matter how hard they seem, no matter how long that road is. There's always a way to reach them.
Right.
So even if that, requires being slower or if that requires using a different strategy, you're always going to end up with a hurdle in the way. There's always going to be a barrier. It just matters on how you break that barrier.
Right.
So there's always a way to get to the goal that you want to get to. It's just going to take a certain amount of time. You can't just bang it out like some people can. Like some people can do it in 2 weeks. Maybe it will take you 3 years. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's really good. So I want to know, just because I am your coach, what would you just say to someone about your experience at Peak? Because we're not a hurdle program. Mm-hmm. That's not our specialty. We tend to kind of be more towards the distance kids. So to have you show up and be in love with hurdles, but yet you still found your people here. Mm-hmm. What's been your experience?
I think my experience at Peak was phenomenal. I think for me that was, taking the step that I needed to take for high school running and getting to, the place in competition where I want to be. I found that although I didn't really fit into the program at first, it was super easy to integrate myself in because you have kids that, like running the 4s and the 8s.
Yep.
So when your event, requires that endurance, you have some sort of relative, I guess, threshold to base that off of. Mm-hmm. So for me, being the one sprinter in the group, that's always kind of a pushing factor for me because I can always be fast.
Right.
And I do have the speed for that, but having the endurance too is super important. So
it's good.
Working with the long distance program is, sometimes you have to do that. And I have to do that this year as well for the 3 and the 4s because that's what they're running. And they have the 800 kids on my team. So running with them is super helpful as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any big memories that you want to share about your experience here?
Going up ptarmigan twice. That was a lot of fun, but also a slight mistake because my legs were really sore. I think just going to camp 2 weeks and seeing, 2 completely different groups of people slowly fit in with the rest of the crowd over the time span was super cool.
Yeah.
That's my phone. But yeah, that was super cool to see. Just, watching kids from Alaska or from Washington or from Minnesota, work their way into the crowd and work their way into the Peak program over a span of 5 days was super cool.
Yeah, for those that are listening that may not know, we have a high altitude summer camp that we do. And Ptarmigan Peak, I think it ends up being 12 or 13, depending on where you want to stop, 12 or 13 miles. And I think 3,200 feet of climbing. And this is at altitude. We start at like 9,000 feet and we get our way up there pretty darn quick. And it's the hard day. I think you could say that doing it twice, you found the hard way both times.
Yeah.
But I think it really teaches you about not giving up and being resilient. And sometimes you're running, sometimes you're hiking, sometimes you're walking. But there's peaks and valleys, just like I think over the last 4 years. So what a great analogy for looking at high school is kind of climbing that peak. So let's hear it. Where are you headed this fall?
I'm going to UCCS, and I'm hoping to get on the team for the 400.
There you go.
400 hurdles. I think that would be a super fun event to run in college because most people don't want to take the jump from 300 to 400. They're like, that's 3 extra hurdles and like 10 extra seconds. So I think that's an event where I can fit in and potentially have the endurance for that, considering
Absolutely.
It's such a long event.
You've got the endurance mindset.
Yeah.
For sure. Jordan, thanks so much for sitting down.
Yeah, no problem.
Sweet.
Love to do it again.
Awesome.